morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at PwC on our LinkedIn Live, launching the 2023 Hopes and Fears survey. I'm just waiting for everyone to gather before we kick off formally. So do make yourself comfortable, grab a cup of tea. I'll give it a minute or so just to get everybody comfy and settled. I'll do some formal introductions in a moment, but I'm here with my esteemed colleagues. You can't see us, but I think we're all looking fabulous, but a bit damp and shop-soiled after that journey in. Have you dried out yet, Alastair?
Just about. I mean, the dog was furious this morning on the walk.
If your dog is anything like me, I don't like my hair getting wet in this particular humidity.
Yeah, he took it personally.
Welcome everyone. If you're gathering and wondering what you've just joined, it is PwC launching the 2023 Hopes and Fears survey. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. I think we'll kick off now. I am Sarah Moore, PwC UK's Head of People Consulting. Now let's just do a bit of housekeeping before we start. If you prefer to use captions, you can tap the 3 dots at the top of this live room and turn them on. So, the PwC Hopes and Fears survey is all about us. Essentially, what's on our mind as workers? What are we thinking right now about our place and our future in the workforce? And Hopes and Fears is one of our most valuable surveys to help with that, particularly for employers, because understanding what the workforce is thinking, feeling, and about to do is vital. An employer who knows the difference between an engaged workforce and a disconnected workforce is what will deliver real growth for UK PLC. And this year's Hopes and Fears survey of 54,000 people across 46 countries, over 2,000 respondents in the UK, has revealed some issues which might be quite surprising and concerning. But it also reveals a lot about how organisations should start planning for the near and longer term. So there's lots to get stuck into over the next 30 minutes. But first things first, I'd like to formally welcome my fellow speakers to the panel. And I'm going to come to you first. Henna, tell me who you are and why you're here today.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Henna Khan. I'm a senior manager. And the reason I'm here today is because I look at the future of work and innovation, particularly human behaviour, and how emerging technologies such as generative AI will reshape the workforce. And I'll hand over to Alastair next.
Good morning. I help organisations work through future workforce strategy in what is a time of massive change. I also have an eye on pay and the cost of living. And Pete.
Hello, and I'm Pete Brown. I'm the Global Leader for People and Organisation at PwC, and I'm the co-author and lead researcher on Hopes and Fears. So delighted to be with you.
Oh, look, fantastic to have you all here today. Look, I found this absolutely fascinating. So many interesting data points, key themes around the cost of living, skills, the employee deal, a 2-tier workforce, and of course, you can't get away from it, AI. Let's try and get through as many of those as we can in 30 minutes. So look, Pete, as you say, you have lived and breathed hopes and fears over the last few months. You've got a global view on this too. What are your main takeaways from the survey?
No, Sarah, I think so. As you know, we do Hopes and Fears as a direct mirror, if you like, 6 months after the PwC CEO survey, which we released in January. And that's where we find out what's on the mind of CEOs and boards around the world. We do this Hopes and Fears survey to work out what's on the mind of workers, right? The people who really make things happen in organisations. And I think the findings, there's some really interesting, some optimistic and some fairly pessimistic findings, I think, this year. I think I'll start with one of the headlines is that last year it was 1 in 5 people we knew would actively be looking for a job in the next 12 months. It's now 1 in 4. So that number's actually gone up. And I think when we look into the data, what we're seeing actually is starting to see is a tale of 2 kinds of workforce, those with skills and those without. And broadly speaking, if you've got skills, you're much more optimistic about the future. As an employer, take note, if you think the Great Resignation or the Great Reset is over, think again, because people with those in-demand skills, they will be more likely to ask for a pay rise, they will ask for a promotion, they will ask to move somewhere. And if organisations aren't addressing a whole bunch of requirements that they have, then don't be surprised if they move on. I think, secondly, in that world of the transformation in which we live. I refer to the CEO survey. We know that 40% of CEOs say that unless they transform their organisation will be economically unviable in 10 years. Workers reflect that too. They see that. And I think there's a message there for leaders, which is your workforce sees that change is required. Embrace that workforce to help drive that transformation. And to do that, you need all your workforce to be equipped and skilled to do that, and can't just rely on those with the skills. And I think finally, and I know you'll touch on it in more detail, I think there are some causes of concern around the cost of living crisis that we're seeing as a result of the softening economy around the world. And I think for 20% of global workers are saying they have to do 2 jobs just to be able to pay the bills at the end of the month. So I'll leave it there. There's so much more I could talk about, Sarah, but I think some really interesting findings around skills and AI and what have you.
No, thanks, Pete. There's lots to dive into today, and some really practical advice in there for organisations as well, and how to really listen to their workers and respond. And that point on cost of living, look, it's really prescient. Only this morning, a report's out that's saying rent is around 28% of salary for people. Yeah. It's huge. And so it really is a lively issue in the UK. Alastair, I'd like to come to you now. What's it telling us?
So just emphasising Pete's point. So in the UK, 47% of our respondents said they had no money left at the end of the month, having paid all their bills. Around 20% did not have enough. That's gone up in the last year, and clearly the cost of living issue is not over, as you just referred to. Rent is rising, mortgage rates will impact people coming off variable rate mortgages. So that's a huge issue in the UK. So 47% just about managing, and 12% of people are taking on more than one job. So I guess we're in a landscape where employers have quite a complex hand to deal with in terms of their employees.
Yeah, look, I remember taking a second job when I first started work as an administrator, and I had a second job in a pub, and I did that for about 18 months at the the early stages of my career. Is it still the youngest people starting out? Who's doing these second jobs, and for how long?
The vast majority are in their 20s and 30s. Actually, presumably the cost of living and the housing expenses we're all facing. And I think when we ask the question, why are you taking on extra work? And there are some clearly for personal reasons, for side hustle, for interest and personal development, but 75% was to make more money.
And look, I mean, there's something here that employers can do, isn't there, about the cost of living pressure facing their employees? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, last year, clearly we saw one-off payments going through in a lot of companies. This year, it's slightly broader. I think a lot of companies have got developed a bit of a toolkit for cost of living around financial well-being, education, different kinds of support. A lot have moved into flexibility. And that is, that I suppose what that addresses not directly cost, but it helps you with things you have to do at home, like childcare, for example, or other obligations. So allowing to flex your working patterns is part of the solution. I suppose there's one thing that organisations can do to help individuals increase their pay packet is progression. So opportunity to progress in your career, which goes to the skills point I know we're going to come on to, and I suppose there is something here about productivity as well. The way to give more back to the workers is through increasing capacity, expanding roles, and that's where technology comes in and modernising the workplace.
Well, look, both you and Pete have mentioned skills, and you're right, it's all over the survey. So I'd like to bring Henna in now. What's Hopes and Fears telling us specifically about skills, Henna?
So Hopes and Fears is telling us a lot about skills, and I think the biggest theme for this is the potential we have to really tap into the skills of our employees and at the same time build that skill capability rather than just using the existing skills. So there was a really big theme. 63% of respondents said that they had skills that are not clear from their qualifications, job history, or their job at the moment. So I think that's a really good point about being able to capture that data as an organization and then utilize it in the best way, so you're able to have people with the right skills in the right place in the organizations. And 51% of respondents said that their formal qualifications are not relevant to their jobs. So there's a very, very strong theme there around knowing who is coming into the organization and what skills are they bringing with them, so that you can best deploy those skills across the organization. So really big theme there. And there's a really big split across key skill areas in how organizations are going to respond to this. So not everyone is feeling confident that they're getting the training that they need to be future-proofed in terms of the skills that they need in the jobs that they're in at the moment.
And I suppose, Sarah, I was going to say, what we're seeing, what Henna's alluding to, is the fact there are a host of new skills required in the workplace for people and organisations to be successful, and the ability to learn those or earn those or demonstrate those is being constrained. That's the sense we were getting from the survey. And I suppose, Pete, you picking up your two-tier workforce point, it's those with professional roles are much more aware of this than those in lower skilled areas. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. They're not only more aware of the impact of AI and are broadly positive, but what's also interesting there is those employees with more skills, they also understand the requirements to develop those sort of human skills, problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, which, as we know, we talk about a lot. As technology continues to dominate and progress throughout the way we work and live our lives, it's that interaction of human beings, those human skills, that are so important. I often say, it's not a bot taking your job that you should worry about. It's a human who can use a bot better than you. So I think that focus on digital and human skills is so important. I think there's a real, call to action for employers to make sure those people who are in less skilled jobs are afforded the opportunity such that they can maintain their relevance in the world of work going forward.
Yeah, they're both really, really good points. And Henna, I want to come back to you around how you're seeing organisations respond to the skills gaps, because there's a real duty there, isn't there?
Yeah, so there's three things I'd mention here, and it's data. So with organizations and how you respond to your skills gaps, and just linking on what Peter's just mentioned about that human element. So we don't actually have, and a lot of our organizations that I'm working with so they know the skills are there, they just don't know how to find them and how to really maximize on that. So having a skills-based organization approach, and when I'm talking about skills, it's not just technical skills, it's also those soft skills. So who in your organization is good at being adaptable, flexible? We know 63% of respondents said that's a really big skills need, being more human. Critical thinking, 64% of UK respondents highlighted that as a really big future skills gap. Right now, a lot of our organizations are struggling to capture or know who is strongest in these skill sets and how can we put those teams together too. So really using technology to connect the dots across those data pools, across all of the different data sets you've got on skills, and also being able to create something that's real time so that you've got people with the right skills in the right place at the right time through using real-time data. So I think that's a really big theme that I've seen so far. And the next level above that is outsourcing and looking at where skills are readily available, where you've got gaps. So moving towards a skill-based economy, having a skills passport, and being able to use a more flexible and dynamic workforce, linking to the point that Alastair mentioned earlier about multiple income, multiple jobs, and being able to actually deploy that across an organisation at scale is something we're really seeing a lot of organisations move towards.
Yeah, it's really powerful when you see that happen. And look, I want to move us on, thank you, around AI. Pete mentioned it up front. Look, you can't move for a headline on generative AI these days. And maybe with Mr. Trick, maybe we should have got ChatGPT to have written this all for us. But I think we'd be missing out on our collective human experience if we did that. What are employees saying about AI, Henna?
Yeah, so people are overly positive about AI, and there's a really strong positive sentiment in the UK respondents. But there's also this 32% of people not sure whether it's going to impact their job, and 19% overall are really, really positive about that. So there's generational differences with this. So boomers and Generation X are less likely to think that AI is going to impact their job, but Gen Z and millennials are really ready, forward-facing, and ready to embrace AI. So there's some really high-level themes from the AI. I'm really happy to talk about it further later.
And I suppose I was going to pick up on that.
I'd like to bring you in now on that, Alastair. Go for it.
Yeah, I suppose. I think there's a bit of negative sentiment or of lack of apathy actually about AI for the survey. I mean, one of the messages in our report is that AI is here to help us. We should see it as the steam power back in whatever century it was, the first industrial revolution. We should see it as Excel for accountants, right? It doesn't destroy jobs. It's going to create new jobs. And I think we're already seeing that with my clients, right? There are jobs which we wouldn't have conceived of 10 years ago, right? Social media manager, for example, cloud, or lots of cloud jobs, all about the Internet of Things, loads of jobs in sustainability, and healthcare diagnostics, for example, that are brand new. And that trajectory is only going to accelerate. The issue, I suppose, is engaging employees and preparing for those jobs. As Pete said, that human and tech collision or a collaboration is key to unlocking it. But I suppose if I was an employer, the skills mismatch between the jobs that are being created and the capability and skills we have in our current workforce is probably the central issue.
Yeah, no, thank you. And look, Pete, again, I was surprised by some of the numbers that were coming out generationally, and perhaps a bit of apathy around the baby boomers and the Generation X around AI for the UK survey. But is this a big issue? You're seeing the whole piece, the whole global survey. And if so, how do you deal with that?
No, I actually think it's quite optimistic, actually, because I think there's actually a view often amongst sort of maybe slightly older generations or leaders that it's a big threat, and are workers are they ready for it? I think what the survey is overwhelmingly telling us is that workers are up for it, right? They've lived through a pandemic where they demonstrated great fortitude, flexibility. They've used technology just to live their life, right? They can embrace it, and there again we saw an uptick in their desire to be trained. It's no different now. They can see this technology coming, and they want to be upskilled in it because they can see the benefits it brings to enable them to do their jobs more effectively, and it takes away some of the mundane. I think the cautionary tone there, those without the skills, right? Those without the skills, many of those, what the survey is telling us is they're not really aware that the impact this technology is going to have and the pace at which it's coming. So I think for responsible employers, I think we have an obligation to educate, to skill, to help workers understand that, such again back to the broken record, we can help them develop the skills they need to stay relevant in the world in which we live and work.
Yeah, it's really proactive, isn't it? If you have drift, if you ignore it, if you put your fingers in your ears and think it will go away, you're going to be really, really stuck. Henna, what now? Pete was very delicate in mentioning generational differences there, but Henna, as somebody that's perhaps not as seasoned as some of the others on the call, what do you think?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I see AI as both a hope and a fear. And I think we saw that theme coming out throughout the survey. And from my perspective and my generational attitude towards AI, I'm really keen to embrace it. So learning about it, learning how it can unlock so many things for me so that I can be more human-powered in what I'm doing, enabled by the tech. So being empowered by generational AI rather than threatened by it. And I'm using it to elevate myself. So elevating the skills I already have, elevating the job, the tasks that I'm doing. And I think that's the way we should be thinking about how we use generative AI. So it's more of a hope, and it's more of a hopeful opportunity than a fearful or something to be scared or threatened about. And for me, it's just about engaging with it right now and being able to unlock the multiple opportunities that are available there.
I love that. And look, as a lifelong Star Wars Episode 4 fan, A New Hope is exactly how we should be thinking about generative AI. Alastair, If you're a CEO, right, we're talking about this, there's lots of things that employers could do, should do within all of this. There's lots of complex issues. And I know productivity in the CEO survey that Pete mentioned at the top of the shop, productivity is front and centre of CEOs' minds in the UK. Can AI help here? Is it part of the answer?
Oh, it has to be. Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's a big productivity issue in this country. You can't move the headlines. I think PwC's latest report on the productivity tracker says it's improving slightly. So that must be the impact of technology. I mean, it's a feature of, employee well-being. It's in education, all those different things. But for me, it is that combination of all the inputs that technology can provide, AI amongst them, and using human insight to make decisions. For me, it's about applied judgment. And I'll just give you an example, right? I've just gone through quite a traumatic remortgaging process with my bank, and I'm sure it's the same. Any kind of bureaucracy people go through. The paperwork and the process is still huge. We haven't really optimized technology in that. I mean, like the 2-hour interview with an existing provider on a remortgage it should not take that long, right? But I think if we can tap into human judgment, applying creative thinking from the information that AI can provide, that's the solution. That will release capacity, that will create new revenue streams and actually improve jobs. And that point about cost of living, economic opportunity comes through your job skilling. So that, for me, this is a really interesting conundrum for CEOs, but the answer's there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Pete, Alastair's alluded to that kind of frustration around people doing their job and how hard it is. What advice are you giving to clients to help create a positive change around that?
What, in terms of how hard
and the tech to really help with productivity and help people do their job? So it's a course.
No, I think it's the point around taking away the mundane, the repetitive stuff, which frankly a lot of workers say they find quite dull and disengaging, right? And also I think a way of freeing up time and capacity. I think there are some also some thoughts there around the levels of overwork going on and burnout, and I think actually with organisations the importance of that holistic well-being offering to their employees, right? It's not just about the hard cash; it's around the benefits package. It's around the focus on mental, physical well-being, the flexibility points. The list goes on, and I'll keep repeating that because I think it's so important that we have a workforce that's healthy and engaged.
That skills passport, Pete, that Henna referred to, we're going to see more of that, aren't we? Because I feel that gives people control of the skills they need to acquire.
Yeah. And I think building on that, if you've got a skills passport, where are you flying to? So generative AI is your co-pilot, working with you hand in hand and enabling you to really supercharge those skills.
Beautifully put. And look, Henna, we're talking about things that employers can do. How does it land? As a millennial, what are your thoughts around what employers should be doing? What do you and your colleagues talk about?
Yeah, so we talk about a couple of different things. I think the biggest one is personalization. So I want the systems I use, the leaders I engage with to know who I am and what matters to me. So being really values led and having an opportunity to be part of something bigger. I've noticed a really big trend from my own perspective and also with my clients and organizations I work with, that the consumer experience should really be reflected in how we engage in the workplace with an employee experience lens. So just like the systems I'm using know who I am, the apps that I use greet me at work, all of my apps should do that too. And progression and multiple career pathways is a really big theme. I want to grow in the organization that I'm in. I want to be able to reskill myself or upskill myself, and I want to be able to progress and realize my full potential. And I think having an organization, having a structure that enables your employees to have multiple career pathways, opportunities to be developed, opportunities to release and enable their full potential is a really big theme. And the final point is just values matter more than brand. So leaders need to walk the talk. And that relates to multiple opportunities and topics, from diversity, disruptive thinking, welcoming innovation, and having space and structure to have new ideas grow within the organization. So they're the three big themes, having personalization, progression, and values mattering more than brand.
It's really exciting when you frame it like that, Henna. And I think this is a theme that's coming out across our conversation this morning, that it's about knowing your workforce, really valuing the diversity that's within it. And we've got scale, we can see scale and flexibility, so employees can have an experience that's very tailored to them. And how empowering and engaging is that? It has such an impact on productivity, which, as we know, is front and centre of CEO's mind. Thank you. Now, I want to put everyone on standby. We're going to have a quick fire round around what is the statistic that most stands out for you? So, Alastair, I can see you at top left. Over to you first.
So the one that jumped out at me, actually, is one Pete referred to earlier, is that the percentage of employees who don't think their business will be viable in 10 years' time. And it was 25% in the survey globally, I believe, but 47% of Gen Z said that. Now the question is, what are they not telling us? What's the information that employees know about that they can see is not helping the organisation succeed? And to your point, listen to the workforce. There's something in that.
Yeah, there is. And look, if they're planning to leave within 12 months, that's data you want to get out of the exit interview, isn't it? Pete, coming to you next. What's standing out for you?
Well, slightly bridging from that, actually, I think starting with the CEO survey, where 40% of CEOs said their organisations need to transform, that's broadly mirrored, as Alice has just said, by workers. But I think in a world where we are transforming in response to climate, in response to technology, I think we all know and recognise to transform, you need to be able to innovate. And to innovate, you need a workforce that's equipped, it's inspired, it's well-led, and it's diverse, and it's empowered, right, to do the job. Now, CEOs would say that they think that 33% of their managers will tolerate and accept dissent and debate, right? It's a very different number for workers, right? There's a real gap there that CEOs think they've got this cultural environment that it allows that dissent and debate, which frankly is essential and inevitable when you're transforming. Yet workers don't see that. Number falls off the cliff. So I think there's something around leaders really actively listening, engaging, empowering their workforce.
Yeah, it's a really missed opportunity, isn't it? Henna, and for you, stand out.
My favourite statistic is that 77% of managers recognise the need for leadership skills is important to their careers. So what this really spoke to me about is the fact that we look to our leaders for clarity, not ambiguity. And it's really, really important if we think about the future of organisations and how they're going to be shaped. So less of a pyramid, but more of an hourglass. What does that mean for the future of how leaders are going to interact and lead as a community and as a system, rather than as a standalone leader? So looking at your leadership for clarity. And I think that's just such a key important point to think about in the context of generative AI and emerging technology. It's never been more important to be a people person than now.
Beautifully put. Now, look, we've got a couple of minutes left. So as I take my skills passport and gently bring us into land, I've got one last question for you all. If you could just briefly say for me, and I know you've covered much of this already, what's the one thing organisations should be doing in response to this? Alastair.
So right now, you should be creating a labour map of your current workforce supply and understanding, scenario testing what your future demand is and working out what's the gap and how do I fill it.
Very practical. And Pete, and you, one thing organisations should be doing?
I think they should be really doubling down on investing in their leadership to make sure they're actively listening, empowering and releasing the power of the broader workforce.
Thank you. And Henna?
I think everyone should be undertaking an AI readiness assessment so that we're ready to embrace the change and elevate ourselves.
Well, if we do all of those three things, I feel that we've got the workforce in good hands. I'm going to bring us to a close now. It's 9:01. Thank you all for your insights. It's been terrific to talk with you this morning and launch the report. For everybody that's listening, it's available now on the PwC UK website or in the comments section of this LinkedIn Live. And we'd love to hear from you, our audience. So if you want to connect with any of us to discuss this theme, please do that and send a request through LinkedIn. And in the meantime, thank you so much for listening and have a good day.